My name is David, and the night I retired was the night I stopped belonging to my own family. I had imagined it differently. For months, colleagues had asked what I would do with my time. Fishing, maybe. Travel. Sleep past 6. Melissa would smile beside me and squeeze my arm, telling everyone how proud she was. The boys would nod politely, distant but civil. That was the fantasy. The reality had been building for years, quiet and corrosive. When I married Melissa, Ethan was 8 and Mark was 5. Their father had already perfected the art of absence. He would appear twice a year with expensive sneakers and grand promises, then vanish when tuition was due. I stepped into the gap without hesitation. Not because I had to, because I believed that love was action. I became the man who stayed. I coached Little League even when they called me David instead of Dad. I attended parent-teacher conferences alone when Melissa was too overwhelmed. I paid orthodontists, summer camps, laptops, car insurance, fraternity dues. Every check I signed felt like an investment in belonging. But belonging never came. The first time Ethan corrected someone who called me his father, he was 13. We were at a hardware store. The cashier smiled and said, "You two look alike." Ethan laughed and replied, "Oh, he's not my real dad." Real. The word landed harder than he intended. I pretended it didn't matter. It always mattered. Melissa would tell me not to take things personally. "They're protective of their dad," she'd say. Protective of a man who hadn't paid a single bill in a decade. I swallowed it. I told myself time would fix it, that loyalty would eventually outweigh biology. Time did nothing. By the time they were in college, colleges I financed entirely, the distance had hardened into something colder. They didn't ask for help. They expected it. Venmo requests, texts that read only, "Tuition due, car needs repair, rent short this month." No greetings, no gratitude, just transactions. Still, I paid, because I believed that sacrifice earns respect. Retirement was supposed to be the proof that it had all been worth it. The backyard in our Denver suburb was strung with white lights. A caterer moved between tables. Former co-workers toasted to my discipline, my consistency, my reliability. Words like rock and foundation floated through the air. Foundation. I stood near the grill, listening to praise that felt oddly hollow. Ethan and Mark were unusually animated that evening, whispering together, checking their phones, suppressing laughter. I assumed they were planning a sentimental surprise. That was my mistake. As the sun dipped behind the rooftops, Ethan clinked a fork against his glass. Conversations quieted. Faces turned toward us. "Speech," someone called. Ethan slung an arm around my shoulder. He smelled of cologne and beer. "Let's hear it for the man of the hour," he announced. Applause followed. I felt a flicker of pride. Maybe this was it, the acknowledgement I had waited 20 years for. Mark stepped forward with a champagne bottle already uncorked. I didn't see the shift in his wrist until it was too late. The cold hit first. Then the laughter. Champagne cascaded over my head, soaking my shirt, stinging my eyes. For a split second, my mind refused to process it. Surely this was playful. Surely it would end with a hug. But Ethan stepped back, hands raised theatrically. "Guess now that you're retired," he said loudly, "you'll finally move out, right?" The crowd laughed. Uncertain, scattered. Mark added louder, "Yeah, man. Time to shut down the ATM." This time the laughter was sharper. Some guests exchanged looks. A few stopped smiling altogether. And then I heard Melissa, clear, bright, amused. "Oh my God. This is perfect." She laughed from behind her phone. "This is going to blow up online." I turned. She wasn't embarrassed. She was filming. Her face was lit with the excitement of someone who believed they were capturing something hilarious. Something shareable. Something viral. Not humiliation. Content. The champagne dripped from my hair onto the grass. My colleagues stood frozen. I saw pity in one man's eyes, discomfort in another's. My own wife was laughing. That was the moment something inside me snapped. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just a quiet internal fracture, like ice splitting beneath weight. It wasn't the boys' words. They had always seen me as provision. It was Melissa's laughter. She knew what I had given. She knew the mortgages, the loans, the restructuring plans, the nights I lay awake calculating how to fund both retirements, hers and mine. And she laughed. I wiped my face slowly. The noise around me felt distant, underwater. No anger, no raised voice, just clarity. I set my glass down on the nearest table, and I walked inside. Behind me, the party stumbled forward awkwardly. Someone tried to change the subject. Music resumed. The illusion of celebration continued. Upstairs, I removed the soaked shirt and stared at myself in the bathroom mirror. 65 years old. A man who had mistaken endurance for love. Just an ATM. The phrase echoed. I remembered every wire transfer, every tuition receipt, every insurance premium, every time Melissa had said, "We couldn't have done this without you." I picked up my car keys. No announcement, no confrontation. I walked through the kitchen where Melissa's laughter still carried faintly through the open patio door. For a second, I considered turning back, demanding an explanation, forcing accountability. But I already had my answer. If a woman laughs while her sons reduce her husband to a bank machine, the marriage is already over. I drove through the quiet Denver streets with champagne drying stiff against my collar. The city lights blurred. I passed the office building where I had spent nearly 3 decades. I felt nothing. By the time I reached the my lake house, the sky was black. I unlocked the door and stepped into silence. No mockery, no phones recording, just stillness. I sat at the kitchen table and replayed the evening in precise detail. The boys' timing, Melissa's positioning with the camera, the rehearsed punchline. It hadn't been spontaneous. It had been planned. That realization hurt more than the words. Around midnight, headlights cut through the trees outside, then pounding at the door. Hard, urgent. "David, open up." Mark's voice, strained, frantic. I waited before answering. Let him feel the delay. When I opened the door, he looked nothing like the grinning man from hours earlier. His face was pale, his eyes wide. "The video," he said breathlessly. "It's everywhere." I leaned against the frame. "And it's not funny," he rushed. "People are saying it's cruel. They're calling Mom manipulative. Sponsors are pulling out. They're digging into your background, into how you paid for everything. They're saying we used you." Used. There it was again. Not remorse. Damage control. I studied him. The panic wasn't about hurting me. It was about consequences. Behind him, the night air was cold and sharp. "Mom's freaking out," he added. "She needs you to come home, to post something, to say it was all a joke." A joke. 20 years of provision reduced to a punchline. I felt something settle inside me then. Not rage, not sorrow. Resolve. "You should go back," I told him quietly. He stared at me. "Are you serious?" "Yes. We need to fix this." "No," I said. "You need to understand it." And I closed the door. Inside, the silence felt decisive. I walked to the desk in the corner of the living room and opened my laptop. The retirement restructuring documents were already drafted. I had intended to finalize them next month. Now felt appropriate. The Denver house deed solely in my name. The vehicles purchased outright titled to me. The business legally structured under a holding company I controlled. Melissa had assumed shared ownership. Assumption is not documentation. I began the transfers, liquidations, protective measures. Each click was calm, measured, not revenge. Correction. If I was an ATM, then I controlled the power switch. I finalized the first authorization and leaned back in the chair. The house was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the faint wind against the windows. For the first time in years, I wasn't calculating how to support them. I was calculating how to leave. And as the clock passed 1 in the morning, I asked myself a question I should have asked long ago. Was I a husband, or just infrastructure they assumed would never fail? "Tell me," If you stood in champagne while your wife laughed behind a camera, would you have stayed? I did not sleep that night. Not because I was restless. Because I was awake in a way I hadn't been for years. The lake house was dark except for the small lamp on the desk where my laptop still glowed with open documents. Outside, the water was flat and black, reflecting nothing. I sat there listening to the quiet, replaying the sound of Melissa's laughter. It had not been nervous. It had not been shocked. It had been delighted. That was what cut deepest. I checked my phone sometime after 2 in the morning. Dozens of missed calls. Messages stacking on top of each other. Melissa first. David, please pick up. It's getting out of control. People are twisting it. Call me now. Then Ethan. You're really going to disappear like this? This was supposed to be funny. Then Mark again. Mom's sponsors are dropping her. You have to say something. Not one message said, are you okay? I placed the phone face down. Around 3, I opened the video. I needed to see it the way the world saw it. The camera angle was slightly tilted. Melissa's voice bright in the background. The frame captured me smiling awkwardly as Ethan began his speech. Captured the moment the champagne fell. Captured the words clearly. Time to shut down the ATM. Captured Melissa laughing. It captured me standing there. Still, drenched, silent. The comments were brutal. This is disgusting. That man paid for their lives. She humiliated her own husband for clicks. Free him. Free him. I watched it 3 times. Each viewing stripped something else away. By 4 in the morning, the video had already crossed hundreds of thousands of views. People had found old interviews where Melissa talked about our business. They had found property records showing the house was in my name. They had pulled up articles about my company. The internet does not miss details. And for the first time, I saw how exposed Melissa must feel. Not exposed as a wife. Exposed as someone who miscalculated public sympathy. I closed the laptop and leaned back in the chair. I had not planned this. I had planned retirement, restructuring, peace. Instead, I was watching my marriage collapse in real time through comment sections. At 6 in the morning, my phone rang again. I answered this time. Melissa's voice was tight, strained. David, where are you? Lake House. You need to come home. No. A pause. Then frustration. This is spiraling. They're attacking me. They're calling me abusive. Sponsors are suspending contracts. Do you understand what this could cost? I stared out at the water. I understand exactly what it costs, I said quietly. Don't do this, she snapped. It was a joke. The boys went too far. I didn't think. That's the problem, I interrupted. You didn't think. Silence. Then her tone shifted, softer, strategic. You know how social media works. People are overreacting. If you post something, say you were in on it, it will calm down. In on it. I let that settle. So you want me to lie? It's not lying, she insisted. It's protecting our family. Our family. I almost laughed. You filmed your sons humiliating me, I said evenly. You laughed. It was harmless. No, I replied. It wasn't. Another silence. Longer this time. You're overreacting, she said finally, her patience thinning. You're embarrassed, and now you're punishing us. Punishing. I realized then that she still did not understand. I'm not punishing anyone, I said. I'm deciding. And I hung up. By mid-morning, news outlets had picked up the clip. Local first, then larger platforms. The narrative was consistent. Retired man publicly humiliated by family he supported for decades. They had turned my silence into dignity. Melissa had turned it into spectacle. Around noon, Ethan called. His voice was different from the night before. Less arrogance. More fear. Dad. He started, then corrected himself. David. I waited. People are sending threats, he said. They're doxing Mom. This is insane. Is it? I asked calmly. It was supposed to be a prank. For whom? He didn't answer. They're saying you paid for everything, he continued. Is that true? Yes. A long pause. You never told us it was all in your name. You never asked. He exhaled sharply. So what now? You just stay gone? Let this destroy us? Destroy. Interesting choice of word. I didn't post the video, I said. I didn't laugh. You're enjoying this, he accused weakly. No, I replied. I'm observing it. And that was the truth. I wasn't gloating. I wasn't celebrating. I was watching consequences unfold naturally. By afternoon, Melissa's personal accounts were flooded. Brands had issued statements distancing themselves. Friends began calling, not to check on me, but to ask what was happening. One former colleague left a voicemail. David, I saw the clip. If you need anything, call me. Not one person found it funny. Not one. The narrative had escaped Melissa's control. At 5 in the evening, Mark showed up again. This time he didn't pound. He knocked. When I opened the door, he looked smaller than I remembered. Not physically. Emotionally. Mom hasn't stopped crying, he said. I waited. She says this could ruin her career. I leaned against the frame. Your career wasn't ruined when you called me an ATM. His jaw tightened. We didn't think it would blow up like this. There's that word again, I said. Think. He swallowed. Are you coming home? No. His eyes flicked around the lake house interior. He was seeing it differently now. Not as a shared retreat. As property. People are saying you should divorce her, he added quietly. And what do you think? I asked. He didn't answer. That silence told me everything. He wasn't defending her. He wasn't defending me. He was calculating. The way they all had. I stepped back slightly, but did not invite him inside. You should go, I said. We need to fix this, he insisted. There's nothing to fix, I replied. Only things to accept. His face shifted, anger trying to resurface. You're really going to let Mom take all the heat? I looked at him steadily. She turned on the camera. He had no response to that. After he left, I returned to the desk and opened the final documents I had hesitated on the night before. Asset restructuring after retirement. Transfer of liquid funds into protected accounts. Revocation of shared access. Each step required confirmation. I confirmed. Not impulsively. Deliberately. I thought about every mortgage payment. Every tuition installment. Every holiday I funded while their biological father sent nothing but text messages. Infrastructure. That was what I had been. Infrastructure does not receive applause. It receives usage. The backlash online intensified into the evening. Hashtags formed. Think pieces were written. Commentators debated dignity, step-parenthood, exploitation. They were dissecting my life like a case study. Yet inside the lake house it was quiet. Around 9, Melissa called again. Her voice was different this time. Not angry, not strategic, shaken. They found the property records, she whispered. They know the house is in your name. They're saying I've been living off you. I said nothing. David, please. We need to present a united front. United. The word felt foreign. Were we united when you laughed? I asked softly. Silence. Then, for the first time since this began, her voice cracked. I didn't realize it would hurt you like that. There it was. Not regret for the act. Regret for the reaction. I closed my eyes briefly. It didn't hurt, I said quietly. It clarified. Another pause. What does that mean? It means I finally understand my place. And what is that? She demanded. Transactional. The line went quiet. Outside, the wind moved across the water in faint ripples. Inside, I felt something settle fully into place. The humiliation had lasted seconds. The clarity would last the rest of my life. I ended the call without saying goodbye. And as I sat alone in the lake house that night, watching the internet debate my dignity, I understood something with absolute certainty. The backlash wasn't destroying my family. It was revealing it. Tell me, when the world sees your worth more clearly than your own wife does, do you go back and pretend it was just a joke? Or do you finally believe what you've been shown? The third morning at the lake house, the The silence no longer felt temporary. It felt structural, like the beginning of a new foundation being poured while the old one cracked somewhere far behind me. I woke before sunrise and made coffee the way I always had. Measured, precise, efficient. Habit doesn't disappear just because respect does. I carried the mug to the large window overlooking the water and watched the thin Colorado light stretch across the surface. My phone vibrated against the wooden table. Not calls this time. Notifications. Legal inquiries. Financial alerts. Media requests. And one message from Melissa. We need to talk in person. I stared at it for a long time. For 20 years, they had needed my money. Now they needed my presence. Strange how quickly dependency shifts shape. I did not respond. Instead, I opened my banking dashboard. There is something sobering about numbers. They do not lie. They do not reinterpret events for sympathy. They simply exist. The Denver house fully paid. Both vehicles purchased outright. The investment accounts structured under my sole ownership. The business shares held in a retirement trust one controlled. Melissa had believed retirement meant shared access. She had never read the fine print. I had always handled the paperwork. She had always handled the optics. I remembered the day we refinanced the house 15 years ago. The banker had asked whether we wanted joint title. Melissa had squeezed my hand and said, "Whatever you think is best, David. Trust or convenience." I chose what was legally sound. She chose not to ask questions. By mid-morning, the news cycle had deepened. Commentators weren't just criticizing the video anymore. They were analyzing finances. Public records were being reposted. People were drawing timelines of my career and cross-referencing them with the boys' tuition histories. Strangers knew more about my contributions than my own family ever acknowledged. Around noon, headlights appeared again outside the lake house. This time it wasn't Mark. It was Melissa. She stepped out of the car slowly, sunglasses on despite the overcast sky. Her posture was rigid, not the relaxed confidence she carried at parties, but something tighter, defensive. I watched her approach the door through the window before opening it. For a moment we simply looked at each other. She looked tired, not from grief, from stress. "Can I come in?" she asked. I stepped aside without speaking. She walked into the living room and glanced around as if seeing the space for the first time, not as a shared getaway, but as a property she might lose. Her eyes lingered on the framed deed certificate near the bookshelf. She had never paid attention to it before. "This is insane," she began, removing her sunglasses. "The backlash is out of control. I've lost 2 brand partnerships already. They're reviewing the rest." I remained standing. "Sit," I said calmly. She sat. For years, I had been the one sitting while she stood over me during arguments, directing, persuading, reshaping narratives. Now the positions were reversed. "They're saying I exploited you," she continued, "that I built my platform off your money." "And did you?" I asked quietly. She flinched. "That's not fair. Is it untrue?" Her silence answered for her. I walked to the desk and picked up a folder. Inside were copies of tuition statements, mortgage documents, vehicle titles, retirement trust papers. I placed them on the coffee table between us. "Do you know whose name is on all of these?" I asked. She looked down. Her face shifted as she scanned the pages. "David. All mine," I said. "Every asset, every liability, every investment." She looked up sharply. "We're married." "Yes. That means..." "It means we share a life," I interrupted evenly. "Not necessarily ownership." Her breathing changed, shallower now. "You never told me," she whispered. "You never asked." The words felt familiar. Pattern. She leaned back slowly, absorbing it. "So what are you saying?" she asked carefully. "I'm saying you miscalculated." Her eyes hardened. "Miscalculated what?" "The assumption that I would endure anything." Silence stretched between us. "You're not seriously thinking about divorce over a prank," she said finally. There it was again. Prank. I felt nothing when she said it now. Not anger. Not sadness. Just distance. It wasn't the champagne, I replied. It wasn't the words. Then what? She demanded. You. She blinked. You laughed. Her mouth opened, then closed. It was nervous laughter. She tried. No, I said softly. It was approval. Her composure cracked for the first time. I didn't mean it like that. But you did. She stood abruptly and paced toward the window. You're blowing up our entire life over one stupid moment. Our life, I repeated quietly. She turned. Yes, our life. The house, the future plans, the retirement trips. The house is mine, I said. The words landed heavily. Her jaw tightened. So that's it? You're going to throw us out? I haven't thrown anyone out. Yet. We stared at each other. For 20 years, I had tolerated subtle dismissals for the sake of stability. I had told myself that endurance was noble. Now I saw it differently. Endurance without respect is self-erasure. Do the boys know? She asked suddenly. About what? That everything is in your name. Yes. Her eyes widened. You told them? They found out. How? The internet. She let out a bitter laugh. So strangers had to expose what you were planning? I wasn't planning to expose anything, I said calmly. I was planning to retire. And leave us dependent? You were already dependent. That stopped her. I could see the realization forming, the connection between the backlash and the financial truth now emerging publicly. You've already moved money, haven't you? She asked quietly. Yes. How much? Enough. She sank back into the chair. For the first time since she arrived, she looked small. Not fragile. Cornered. You're humiliating me, she whispered. I considered that carefully. No, I said. You humiliated me. Another silence. Then something shifted in her expression. Less defensive now. More calculating again. This can still be fixed, she said slowly. If you come back. If we present unity. If we say it was staged. I shook my head. It wasn't staged. It can be. I almost admired the instinct. Control the narrative. Rewrite the truth. That's your world, I said quietly. Not mine. Her eyes searched my face for softness. There was none left to give. David, she said, voice trembling now. Not strategically, but genuinely uncertain. We built this together. No, I replied. I built it. You curated it. The words hung in the air. Outside, the wind moved across the lake in long, low ripples. Inside, something final settled between us. She stood slowly. So what now? She asked. I looked at her for a long time. I'm filing for divorce. Her breath caught. You're serious? Yes. Over 2 decades of marriage reduced to a single, measured sentence. You would end everything? She whispered. It ended when you laughed. Tears formed in her eyes, not dramatic, not theatrical. Just real. But they arrived too late. You're punishing us, she said weakly. No, I answered. I'm choosing myself. That was the difference. For years I had chosen them. Over and over. I had absorbed disrespect because I believed providing was enough. Now I understood something painful and simple. Provision without dignity breeds contempt. She walked toward the door slowly, as if gravity had shifted. Before leaving, she turned back. What about the house? I'm selling it. Her face drained of color. And where are we supposed to go? I held her gaze. That's something you should have considered before turning me into a punchline. She stood there for another second, as if hoping I would soften. I didn't. She left without slamming the door. When the car disappeared down the road, the lake house returned to silence. I sat back down at the table and stared at the documents again. Divorce filing forms already prepared. Retirement trust activated. Real estate listing draft saved. It wasn't revenge. It was alignment. For the first time in years, my actions matched my worth. Tell me, if the house, the cars, the security, all rested on your name alone, and the people living under that roof mocked you publicly, would you keep financing your own humiliation? Or would you finally collect the bill? The divorce papers were filed on a Thursday morning. No announcement. No dramatic confrontation. Just signatures. There is something almost surgical about ending a marriage when emotion has already drained out of it. The paperwork felt cleaner than the party had. Precise. Controlled. Quiet. I didn't return to the Denver house after Melissa left the lake house that day. I let the legal notice arrive there before I did. I wanted the envelope to sit on the kitchen counter. I wanted its weight to be felt before my presence was. By evening, my phone was ringing again. This time, all three of them. I let it ring. When Ethan finally left a voicemail, his voice carried anger again. But beneath it, panic. You're really going through with this? Over a video? Do you know what this is going to do to Mom? Interesting. Still centered on her. Still not on me. Mark texted shortly after, "The house can't just be sold. That's our home." Ownership had returned to their vocabulary now that the paperwork had surfaced. Melissa called last. I answered. Her voice was brittle. "You filed?" "Yes." "You didn't even talk to me again." "I did," I said. "You just didn't listen." A long exhale. "The boys are falling apart," she whispered. "Are they?" I asked evenly. "They didn't think you'd actually do anything. They thought you'd cool off." I leaned back in the chair at the lake house. "That's the problem," I said. "They thought." Silence stretched on the line. "You're going to sell the house?" she asked. "Yes." "And then what? Just disappear?" "No," I replied calmly. "I'm relocating." "Where?" "Another state." The words felt steady. Grounded. She inhaled sharply. "You're abandoning us." I almost smiled at the symmetry. "Abandonment," I said quietly, "is laughing while someone is humiliated." She didn't respond to that. Instead, her voice shifted. Softer now, but desperate. "We can fix this. Counseling. Public apology. I'll delete the video. I'll tell everyone it was my fault." My fault. Not our fault. Not the boys' fault. Her fault. Even now, she framed it strategically. "I don't need a public apology," I said. "I needed a private loyalty." Her breath caught. "You're choosing pride over family." "No," I answered. "I'm choosing dignity over endurance." That was the distinction she could not understand. For 20 years I had endured. Endured the comparisons. Endured the corrections. Endured the casual way Ethan would say, "My dad thinks," as if I were an auxiliary option. Endured the way Mark would introduce me as Melissa's husband. I had mistaken patience for strength. But patience without boundaries turns into permission. And I had given them permission to reduce me. The real estate listing went live 2 days later. Within hours, offers began to come in. The market in that Denver suburb was strong. The house would sell quickly. When Ethan showed up at the lake house the following weekend, he didn't knock this time either. He walked in without waiting. He looked different. Not panicked. Not arrogant. Shaken. "You're serious," he said. "Yes." He looked around the room, taking in the quiet space, realizing, maybe for the first time, that this had never been shared property. "You're blowing up everything," he muttered. "No," I said calmly. "I'm removing myself." "That's the same thing," he snapped. "No," I replied. "It only feels that way because everything depended on me." He flinched. I could see the math working behind his eyes now. Mortgage payments, insurance policies, property taxes, the invisible labor of stability. "You didn't have to humiliate Mom publicly," he added weakly. I met his gaze. "I didn't." He looked away first. "You could have just talked to us." "I tried," I said. "For 20 years. He didn't argue that, because he couldn't. For the first time since I had known him, he looked like a man rather than a boy. "You're really leaving Colorado?" he asked. "Yes." "Why?" I considered that carefully. "Because staying would mean I'm waiting for you to respect me." Silence. "And you don't think we will?" he asked quietly. I looked at him, really looked at him. "I think you might," I said. "Eventually." But not because you understand. Because you need something. That landed. His jaw tightened. That's not fair. It's accurate. He swallowed. We didn't mean it like that, he said. The words were clear, I replied. And your mother's laughter was clearer. He didn't defend her this time. He just stood there. When did you stop loving us? He asked suddenly. The question surprised me. I didn't, I said. Then how can you do this? I exhaled slowly. Love without respect becomes exploitation. The room fell quiet again. He looked at the floor. We thought you'd just take it, he admitted. There it was. The truth. Not cruelty. Expectation. He had grown up believing I would absorb anything. Because I always had. I did take it, I said softly. Until I didn't. He left shortly after that. No shouting. No slammed doors. Just a heavy silence following him out. The Denver house sold within 3 weeks. Melissa tried to negotiate, tried to delay, tried to argue about marital equity. The documents were airtight. She hadn't realized how thoroughly I had structured my retirement plan years ago. Not because I distrusted her, because I believed in preparation. The closing day arrived quietly. I didn't attend in person. I signed remotely from the lake house. When the funds transferred into my account, I felt no triumph, just completion. Melissa called again that evening. They're asking where we're going to live, she said. You'll find somewhere, I replied. With what? She demanded. I let the silence answer. She had always assumed shared access. She had always assumed continuity. Assumption is expensive. You're punishing us, she said again. No, I repeated calmly. I'm refusing to be punished. That was the difference she refused to see. A month later, I packed what remained at the lake house. I accepted a consulting offer in another state. Smaller city, slower pace. No shared history. No recorded humiliation. Just space. Before I left, I drove once through the old neighborhood in Denver. The house no longer belonged to us. Strange how quickly something stops being home. I didn't feel grief. I felt release. Melissa sent one final message before the move. If you walk away now, there's no coming back. I stared at it for a long time. Then I typed, that's the point. And I meant it. I didn't humiliate them back. I didn't post revenge statements. I didn't expose private details. I simply removed my support, removed my presence, removed my funding. And when the foundation disappeared, the structure shook. Not because I attacked it, because it had always depended on me. Now, in a different state, in a smaller house purchased outright, I wake up in silence that belongs to me. No cameras, no mockery, no expectation that I will endure for the sake of appearances. Sometimes I replay that night in the backyard, the champagne, the laughter, the word ATM, and I ask myself, was that the moment everything ended? Or was it just the moment I finally stopped pretending? They say family is about unconditional love, but no one talks about conditional respect. So tell me, if the people under your roof treat you like a machine, if your wife laughs while you're reduced to a paycheck, do you keep the power running? Or do you finally flip the switch and walk away? Was I wrong? Or would you have endured it forever?